Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here with,
Monsters Review.
and we are here to talk about a subject that no one on the internet has ever covered before. Obviously, I'm joking. Basically, the Thundercats war thing happened, what was it, last month? It's about 4 weeks now.
Yeah. Yep.
And I talked about it a little bit on Twitter. I think you mentioned it in your latest video,
Yep.
but you didn't really go into it. I didn't go into it in any videos. And the thing is like this is a subject that just kind of got like bombed on everyone, like nuked all over YouTube and Twitter and everything. And I feel like kind of having some time between that and actually sitting down to talk about it is helpful. Now that kind of like the immediate reactions are out there, and
Right. Now that the dust has settled.
yes, that's a good way of putting it. We can kind of calmly just talk about what happened, what this show is, what it's all about, and just the fans' reaction to it. I guess just to give it a little bit of context, if somehow you didn't know, basically Warner Brothers dropped this trailer. It's like a 3-minute trailer where it's got just like the main character Lion-O kind of standing in a void introducing himself, and then it cuts to like Warner Brothers Animation Studio, the guy that's making the show talking about how he's a big Thundercats fan and he loves Thundercats and he's a Thundercats fan, you guys, and he wanted to make this show for Thundercats fans and also for new generation. And then we kind of see, I think it's like the opening sequence and just like a little bit of animation. It's a weird trailer. It's not just like all footage, and it's not just like a behind the scenes video. It's like a mixture of both in a weird way. And really this is all we have to go on at this point. My personal reaction, I have to say that I don't like the look of this. And I'm not talking about Cal art style here. I just mean that the design doesn't really strike me as very interesting, especially because Thundercats was a show. The only thing I know about Thundercats really is just that it was a show that was very stylized visually. Visually, it doesn't look good to me. From everything, like the title of the show, just the fact that it's another reboot, it just kind of screams to me that it's going to be probably not very original. It's probably not even going to really have too much to do with the actual show that it's taking from, and it just doesn't look like it's very well made. And on top of that, the actual trailer that came out was a very confusing and weird way to introduce this show, because it doesn't really give us that much to work with here, and at the same time it feels like it's just kind of like this guy trying to convince us that his show is going to be really good. It's like telling without showing. So I think the trailer was bad. I think that this show does not look very good from just judging the trailer. And I don't like the fact that this is going to continue the trend of let's take these action shows and reboot them into chibi, like comedy driven, basically the opposite of what they originally were, types of shows that kind of have very little to do with the original show.
Right. I mean, this move makes total sense. Because with what we've seen from Teen Titans Go, the Powerpuff Girls reboot, and the Ben 10 reboot, all of those shows were possibly rebooted. And one of the big reasons why is because they sold a lot of merch. And if you remember the original Thundercats, along with a lot of other action cartoons from the 80s, like G.I. Joe and He-Man, like those pretty much only existed to sell toys. So yeah, like you said, we've seen this formula work so many times, seeing a comedy-infused reboot with a little bit of action. As for my take on Thundercats, I didn't grow up in the 80s, so I was never too familiar with the original one. I saw a little bit of the remake, but I never really watched it too much in depth. I'm also not looking forward to this. I don't think it looks very nice as well. That trailer wasn't very good. And I think the producer kind of defends it. That's basically like the entire thing. He's just like, as a fan, I think this is the Thundercats show that I'd want. I grew up watching it when I was a kid, and I think it kind of contradicts itself in some ways, because he says that they're ramping up the action, and for every one step they take in the direction of comedy, they're going to take two for the action. But I don't see how you're supposed to take the action seriously when it's tonally comedic.
Yeah.
He seems to want it both ways, not only in terms of that, but also trying to appeal to the original fan base. I think there's obviously some brand recognition here, but also to a younger audience who probably doesn't know what the Thundercats are in the first place. So I can't really speak on behalf of the Thundercats fan base because I'm not a fan. But I think I'd feel pretty alienated. Even though it has the same characters, the same location, same general concepts, It seems like an entirely different show, and I think it's clear that people aren't really excited about it.
Yeah. I mean, I was never a fan of the original Thundercats, so I don't have a personal connection with this reboot. And in all honesty, even if it was done decent, it probably wouldn't have been something I was checking out anyway. Now, if they did a great job with it, if it was really interesting or really funny, I definitely would have checked it out. But I have no problem fully admitting that this is not a show that is aimed towards me, and it's not a show that I necessarily would have watched even if it's handled decently.
Right.
And I say that just because I don't think that I don't expect my opinion to actually matter on this. Like, it's just my opinion. And I mean, we'll talk about this a little bit when we kind of talk about the reactions. I just kind of want to preface that like my reaction here is not a, oh my god, they ruined something I loved, or blah 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 blah, blah, because it's not. It's just, this does not look very good. That is essentially the beginning and end of my reaction. And the bigger problems that I have with it come more with the trends that Cartoon Network is following, and less than just like exactly what we're presented here.
Exactly.
However, I do want to say that just like, I think that the show is worth talking about, as every show is worth talking about. But I personally don't think that, like, I feel like when it comes to the conversation of like Teen Titans Go and the Powerpuff Girls reboot and Ben 10 and all that, as a community, we end up kind of talking about the same talking points over and over again instead of actually analyzing things from a different perspective and talking about different aspects of it. And that kind of frustrates me.
Yeah, it's quite redundant, and it's a little toxic as well. People bring up the same talking points. They say pretty much the same things. It ruined my childhood, or the art style has gotten progressively worse. But I wish that we were a little bit more progressive, and also maybe a little bit less biased. I mean, I know that we really don't have too much bias here because we weren't familiar with the original Thundercats too well, but many others are.
Yeah, and this is we're kind of moving into the next subject that I wanted to talk about, which was not even necessarily a reaction to the show itself, but just the reactions to the reactions, which I know sounds ridiculous, but I find that since a lot of there is only so much we can talk about with this trailer. I think it is kind of more interesting to turn on not to turn on, but to turn the spotlight towards the people reacting to this, and just kind of just the I guess like the two extreme ways that people have been reacting to this, with a ton of very reasonable people in the middle. Like, I think that if you don't like this show, for whatever reason, you have a right to say that, to share your opinion, to talk about it. But it's the people that go on and on about this ruined your childhood. There was a very, very popular video, or a video that got a lot of views from someone in the animation community that isn't super popular but has a decent following. I can't even remember his name, but he used, like, I think cuck in the title or something, which is always how you know that there's going to be great content. But that guy was like legitimately saying like it ruined my childhood, and the people that are for this are bad, and blah 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 blah. That sort of reaction is just inflammatory and pointless. No matter how strongly you feel about this, I just don't see that as ever justified. That level of like, just like hating on the creator of the show, and just, I don't know. I just think it's overreacting, and I really very much don't like that, because it paints a lot of the people in the community that have legitimate criticisms or even just like mild opinions as just really childish.
Right. No, I totally agree. And I think people are having a hard time understanding that Thundercats Roar is not the Thundercats you grew up with in the 80s, or the Thundercats you grew up with in the early 2010s. It's entirely different thing. Sure, it's the same characters, same settings. It's just like comparing Teen Titans Go to Teen Titans. It's apples to oranges. They're two different things. And I don't think it can really ruin your childhood if it's already over,
Yes. I don't think any piece of media can ruin your childhood, generally speaking. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's, I don't know, maybe like, no, I can't even come up with an example.
Yeah, but also, like, if you see something new that comes out and you're like, oh, it ruined my childhood. If anything, wouldn't that make your childhood better because you got to experience the version you prefer more?
I guess just yeah, I mean, like my thing is just call a spade a spade. If the show doesn't look very good, then the show doesn't look very good. If it doesn't look very
Right.
good in comparison to the show that you love, then I think it's fair to say that as well. But saying that it's ruining your childhood, saying that it's just like the end of animation or something. I mean, even I don't like the trend that this is continuing, but I still don't think it's the end of animation. I don't think that this art style is taking over. I think that's just a ridiculous opinion to have personally.
Right, and there's a lot of fair criticisms that you could throw out too for the style that the original Thundercats had in comparison to a lot of other animated shows at the time.
Mhm. Oh, and I also think it's important to say that just just because this is the art style that they showed in the trailer doesn't necessarily mean it's the final one they went with in the show.
Right.
Things get tweaked as the first few episodes of a show goes on.
Right, like the Gravity Falls and the Steven Universe pilots look fairly different to the actual shows.
So I do think that although it's fair to criticize what the show is, it like it's I don't know. I'm put in this awkward position where it's like it's totally fair to judge the trailer, but you have to also just keep the perspective in mind that it is a trailer. Things can change with it. You cannot go off the rails screaming about this show. It's not even out. I mean, I don't even think screaming about the show, even when it's out, is appropriate or fair, but it just kind of makes it just makes any criticism you have look childish. And I do recognize that there are younger people on the internet that don't necessarily know that that's not the way to behave. But it's just, I think it is unfortunate that people are reacting in that way because I do think there are very legitimate criticisms and very legitimate concerns, not just about what we see in the trailer, but about the trend that this is continuing on with.
I agree. There's totally some level-headed criticisms in the bunch, but often we see the radical and the super far-fetched ones reach the top because they're obviously the most controversial.
Yep, absolutely. And I do always want to make that clear. I recently made a video about the new Pokemon games coming out and how I think it's ridiculous that some people are saying that it's like ruining Pokemon or that these games shouldn't exist or just really extreme things. And I always think it is super important when talking about extreme people to separate them from the people that just have criticism, the people that have a measured response, the people that say, this isn't, I'm not interested in this, because I don't want like a Ghostbusters situation where like you come in with the argument of like, if you're not interested in Thundercats Roar, there's something wrong with you, because no, absolutely not. You are totally it is totally fair for you to say this show is not for me. It is totally fair for you to say that the show does not look good. It's totally fair for you to have criticisms with it. It's just the extreme levels, and I think I always try to separate out those people because, as we'll talk about in a minute, there are always people willing to jump on a bandwagon to say that everyone that's even throwing out mild criticism of this show are just screaming entitled babies that should shut up.
Right.
And I hate that. I hate that so much. So, if you're ready, let's move on to talking about the people, basically the people that are reacting to the people that are reacting at Thundercats. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing. I think, and I'd be hypocritical if I didn't think this, but I do think that people that make videos and that talk on Twitter or whatever about the extremists specifically, about how they're being childish about the subject, I 100% think that that is perfectly fine. What I don't like is the people that lump everyone together and that make sweeping generalizations about anyone that doesn't either love this show or say, that doesn't claim like this is a children's show and my opinion does not matter. The people like that, I cannot stand.
Yeah, it's definitely hypocritical. And I mean, I think that like you mentioned, attacking other people just because they have a different opinion than you,
Mm-hmm.
that's obviously been a big thing that's resulted from this whole controversy. And I think it's wrong.
Yep. People make assumptions. You'll reply to a Twitter thread and you'll say, well, I don't like that it's a trend or whatever, and then they'll just reply like, well, you just hate it because it's not for you, or you just hate it because it's different, or they'll pull any number of these arguments out of a hat that you never said.
Right. It's all logical fallacies.
Yep.
And yeah, I think that sometimes you will find ignorance, people who will lump everybody into a group and not really give the show a fair shot.
Mm-hmm.
But A, I don't know if that really represents the majority, and B, it is kind of understandable because Cartoon Network has routinely done this throughout the past 5 years, like with Teen Titans Go and the Powerpuff Girls and etc.
Yep. That's the thing that kind of bugs me is when people that are like outside the community kind of chime in on this, and I have no problem with like just because you don't make videos on this subject does not mean you cannot ever make these videos. But I see some people that don't typically talk about cartoons making videos on this that don't do their research. They come in with it and they're like, why are people freaking out over this cartoon? Is it just because it's not the Thundercats they grew up with? Oh, those silly people. You're all stupid. It's like, I'm not saying that the show looks identical to Teen Titans Go, but like the title is meant to kind of elicit that same feeling of the show. It's titled in the same way.
Right.
And it's not just Teen Titans, it's Powerpuff Girls, it's Ben 10, it's the fact that we haven't really seen too much in the way. I mean, it's even to an extent like OKKO, which I don't really have a problem with that show. I don't know much about that show, but it's just kind of like this idea that action shows now have to have a more cartoony style. They have to be more focused on comedy than they ever were. They have to not actually have too much action in them. It's a trend. You have to realize that, right? A lot of the people that are talking about Thundercats Roar aren't even talking about Thundercats Roar. It's rolling their eyes because they've seen this be done 4 or 5 times in the past few years.
Right. People are kind of getting tired of it, and it's totally understandable.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the Thundercats Roar trailer and the show itself wants to elicit a response of nostalgia. It 100% does. And I think it's fair to say that if they are going for the feeling of like, hey, I remember that, I want to watch this show, I think it's totally fair for audiences to respond in the opposite way of saying, I remember that, I don't understand, I don't like why you're remaking this. You don't give me a good reason for this show to exist.
Cough, cough, merch.
Yep. And I mean, there's other arguments too of just that, like, I mean, reboots in general. It's not even necessarily just the action show into chibi action comedy show reboot. It's just people I've always been sick of that, and it's just, yeah. But anyway,
right.
I'll just call this out that there's people like Movie Bob out there. I don't know if you're familiar with him. That they make these sweeping generalizations. I find that, like, I don't know, there's some people out there that are fanboys that also seem to hate other fanboys. They're people who will make videos that are essentially rants, which I don't have a problem with, as long as you keep it within a certain measure of response. You're not attacking anyone, you're not going overboard saying it ruined your childhood, but you're speaking passionately about a subject that you're passionate about. They make these rants and they do these things, but yet they don't like it when other people do these things. When everyone else does it, oh, then they're all just whining fanboy blah blah blah. When I do it, I'm like some sort of like super analyst guy. Movie Bob has this attitude, and I really I like some of the stuff he does. I don't think he's terrible at analyzing things, but he has this really, I think, kind of toxic feelings towards other people that like what he likes or that don't like what he likes or whatever, that bleed into his videos, and really just kind of because he's a kind of smart guy, it makes people think like that, and I hate it. He talked about in his video about like, well, this show's for kids, it's not for you, blah 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 blah. And it's like, okay, Movie Bob, I really hope you've never reviewed a rom-com because those movies were not made for you. I really hope you've never spoken about anything that wasn't directly 100% related back to you, because I see this argument a lot. And I just Googled, or I just YouTube searched Thundercats Roar, and the second thing that came up was a video. I haven't seen it, and I don't know, I'm not gonna hate the person because I don't know anything about the video, but the thumbnail says your hate means nothing, and the title is Why Thundercats Roar and CN Won't Listen to You. And it's like, newsflash, I don't make these videos, I don't have these opinions because I want the channel to directly listen to me. I make these videos because I have an opinion. I'd like it if Cartoon Network stopped the trend, but I'm not directly talking to them, and I have my opinion regardless of whether it matters or not. I just feel something, and I feel like sharing that something.
Exactly.
The people that go in with the attitude like you can't make videos like this unless you're specifically trying to force the network to change, I don't think you understand why a lot of people do this.
Right. Yeah, no. I used to make a lot of rant videos. I kind of watch them back and I cringe now because I genuinely, I was like, Stuart Snyder, if you listen to me, I will become the next president of Cartoon Network. I will fix the schedule, all this crap.
Yeah.
But after doing that for a little while, I realized that, yeah, sure, it'd be nice if they responded to my criticisms or whatever. But it is because I have an opinion and I want to voice. YouTube is a platform where I could voice my opinion, where I could share my frustrations.
I mean, that's ultimately it. And to start a dialogue. Sometimes you just want to talk about something, like in the same way baseball fans talk about how the season's going, how the players are doing, how they don't agree with this decision made. That's the same with fans of any hobby. That's what we are. We're spectators. We don't get to make the calls, and we don't really expect that they're going to directly listen to any individual. But I mean, I'm not like, if we all talk about it enough, maybe someone will see it and maybe they won't. And that's just the attitude I go in with. And I feel like a lot of people that are responding to the responses to Thundercats don't seem to understand that we know we're outside the demographic. We know that. We're not stupid. Like,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that we're not allowed to have opinions, especially with the show that is explicitly trying to play on nostalgia. You would not see this sort of response to you didn't see this sort of response to OKKO because it wasn't trying to be an older show. It was trying to be its own thing that was like inspired by some of these other shows.
Exactly. You can't expect to revamp this old beloved property and not expect to provoke any of the original fan base.
Yep. And Cartoon Network, I think they know this. I think you're right in saying that a lot of the videos seemed a little bit defensive. And I think that even though they're not explicit, like their prime target is kids, it will be kids because they want the kids to buy the merchandise. They do want older people to at least view it once or twice because that's more ad revenue for them. That's more clicks for them. They know it's the older people that are going to buy like the DVDs and stuff like that.
They don't want to alienate anyone. They clearly do. I mean, it's not really in this instance, but they kind of do want to appeal to as many demographics as they possibly can, because that just means, more eyes looking at the screen for their show. But they are in some ways also alienating people. I'm not sure if it's as easy as what they're trying to do.
Hmm. And I guess another thing I want to say is just the people that make these videos that are against like the criticism of Thundercats. It's frustrating because Thundercats, because the topic blew up so fast, it became a Rick and Morty situation where it's an easy target to make fun of someone whining about Thundercats. It's a super easy target. Just like how Rick and Morty fans were an easy target after the Szechuan sauce incident. Even though that was a very small amount of fans that reacted that way, and even though there's tons of people that watch the show that also are face palming at these people, it just became a topic that's just easy to make fun of. You can make you or me could make a video the same day that the trailer launched, just saying like these people are overreacting, these people are insane, blah 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 blah. Make a 2-minute video, throw it up, put ads, blah blah blah, get a ton of clicks. It's an easy subject to mine for that. There's a number of people out there that looked at this trailer and do like it. And I do think that those people are 100% entitled to their opinion. And I think that's great. If you look at the show and you see something inspiring and you want a Thundercats for you, I think that's like totally okay. And I will not stand for the people that put those people down that are just trying to enjoy the show or they're excited for it. But I do think that for a lot of people, even a lot of young people, the fad of rebooting a show, the fad of doing this, it's getting old.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've seen it so many times. I mean, Nickelodeon is bringing back Double Dare. They just brought back Hey Arnold for a movie. Each network is bringing back a ton of stuff. They just brought back Roseanne.
That turned out well.
Yeah. Yeah. Right now we're kind of in the peak of that. Yep. But I agree with you in saying that it's probably not going to be something permanent.
And I guess one other thing I did want to say was just that, like, when it comes to these sort of reboots, I am going to argue that Teen Titans Go was not as successful as it was because it was a Teen Titans remake. I will say this. It is not my cup of tea 100%, but Teen Titans Go did have a different style of comedy. It was very extreme. It was very out there. It was very loud. And I think that networks chasing that by just doing more reboots is not necessarily the right way to capture that. I don't know that another show could capture that because much like how Family Guy was shocking in its time for older audiences, I think Teen Titans Go has a shock value that is very difficult to emulate with another show.
Right. It's different. And I mean, kind of playing off what you were saying earlier, who's to say that Cartoon Network can't create a super sophisticated and beloved IP right now and reboot it down the line?
Yeah. Yeah. Just not everything needs a reboot. I don't know. I can't believe I'm saying this, because if you were to ask younger me, I would have like eaten all of it up and been like, yes, bring everything back. But it's like, art has its time and art has its place, and just create something new. It's not that hard, is it? Maybe it
Right.
is. I mean, it is. I'm not saying it's easy to create something new, but like, really, you couldn't tweak Thundercats Roar just a little bit and call it its own show? I mean, would anyone really like? You know.
Right. Just have it be Lego Legends of Chima Roar.
Well, that's the thing, is that the people that are arguing, that are like, why, it's for kids, it's for kids, it's for kids, it's not for you, blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, well, why do kids need a Thundercats? From everything I've seen, Thundercats didn't look like a great show, to be all honest with you. I just, in an uninformed opinion, Thundercats is not like, this god among animation that like kids need to be seeing this.
Right.
It was just it looked like just another 80s show that had its fans, had a lot of kids that watched it just because it was on, sold a lot of toys, and that was that. So the argument that like kids need a Thundercats for their generation, I think is kind of bogus. I think that's just like, that's kind of excusing the laziness of bringing something back.
Exactly. And not to mention, I know that this isn't really a thing anymore, but I think when we were younger, instead of remaking things, we often saw reruns. So, I mean, obviously, the '80s show is super outdated. I bet kids today would hate it, but they could rerun some stuff that's similar instead of making an entirely new, revamped version of it.
Oh, I also thought of something. Just as a disclaimer, because I know people are going to say this, I know that it's in part Warner Brothers and not 100% Cartoon Network, because Warner Brothers is making this show. Warner Brothers made Teen Titans Go. I think the Powerpuff Girls was Cartoon Network. I can't remember which one Ben 10 was, but
I think it's also Cartoon Network.
But basically, I don't think it matters, because Cartoon Network is still the one greenlighting these things, still has control over when this stuff airs, and Warner Brothers and Cartoon Network have the same parent company, which, by the way, was just recently bought by AT&T.
Woohoo.
So it doesn't really matter who we're talking to here, because honestly, it's kind of the same people intermingling. It's people are always fast to make that point, like, oh, it's not Cartoon Network's fault, it's not Warner Brothers' fault. I don't think, like, it's not a who we're gonna point the blame on. It's a thing that's happening with media, with two companies that are very, very much intertwined. It doesn't matter which one is doing it or not. They're all kind of the same entity, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just had to throw that out there, because I know I'd get comments otherwise.
Something like Samurai Jack season 5, which came out last year, totally justified, because the show kind of ended without really a satisfying conclusion. So it was nice to see that show come back with a lot of the original crew and original voice cast and everything. A show that came back and tied up loose ends and gave us maybe not the conclusion everybody wanted, but but something like Ben 10 or Thundercats, it's not really needed.
I do think execution matters. I do. I think that the show could be really, really great. It totally could be. I still have that open mind. I don't know whether I'm going to watch it or not, but I still think it could have that. However, I think that even though it matters in terms of the individual show, I do still think that the trend is what it is, and we've seen enough to see the trend. This is not the second show this has happened to.
Right. I mean, I know that this was most likely, mostly a business decision, but when I look at a reboot, I just try to think about, is there any way that this can be done in a different way that can improve upon or outshine the original?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this can do that.
Like, I would argue, I wouldn't really want to see it, but I would argue that something like Rocko's Modern Life could be rebooted, because if you take that signature comedy, satire, wacky style and apply it to more modern ideas, there's something there. That is something.
Right, that teaser they released was great.
Yes, that's a reason, and I'm totally happy with it just being a TV movie. I don't want it to be brought back, but a show like that, I can see why you would do that. A show like Ed, Edd n Eddy, I don't think would ever need a reboot. Not that it's getting one. Fingers crossed. Because it's a timeless show in and of itself. Same thing with Courage. Courage is a timeless show. Sure, the computer looks like it's from the 90s, and sure, there's a few references here and there, like the Sean Connery snowman that might be dated. But generally speaking, because of the way the show is, it is set in this kind of not specific time period that could work for newer and older audiences, and I think that's part of why Courage gets a lot of airtime, even in current Cartoon Network. Or not necessarily right now, but over the years, Courage has been the one consistent show that they will bring back and air pretty much every other year.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Didn't we do a discussion like a year or two ago about reboots?
Yeah, we talked. Yeah, we talked about fandoms and reboots and how they're damaging. I mean, yeah, when we were younger, it's like, oh, this show's ending. I hope that they bring it back. But now that we've seen all of these botched reboots, and you know, we're here in 2018, you know, you kind of think to yourself, maybe this wasn't the best idea.
yeah. I've made a huge mistake. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tough spot, and I'm 100% open to hearing opinions from people who like the idea of the reboots. I'm 100% open to hearing opinions from people who think this looks good, and from people who think this looks bad. My MO is I want good discussion going on about these shows. Good analysis, good discussion. I don't want people screaming at each other over, you know, this show's ruining my childhood. No, you're just anyone that has criticism.
You shouldn't be
over
taking
this.
something seriously with cat people anyway.
Oh God, yeah. There's that argument too, which is just like, what? I mean, I think just the fact that the situation kind of blew up meant that a lot of people that really don't go anywhere near this sphere just kind of chimed in just to take a pot shot.
Right. Yeah. It gets a lot of attention. What more can you say?
Yeah. So yeah, just kind of let us know what you think. I really would like to hear some good discussion on this now that we've maybe passed the phase of just like 100% reactionary content. We can just sit down, we can have a nice little cup of tea, maybe hot chocolate, and just really discuss it. I hope you found this video to be a bit refreshing. I did get a little passionate at times, but you know, I wanted to, it's more of a passion at the people who, I don't know. It's just like anger at people that are getting angry. And I know that's stupid and ridiculous, but it's just like, let's just all talk, you know?
We just want some civil discourse.
Basically, and I know that's ridiculous to ask for on the internet, but the more of it we can get, the better. The more we can show the outsiders that we are not a community that is just screeching at everything that we don't like. We have criticism, we have analysis skills, we have the ability to have a discussion about this sort of thing. I think it's just good for the community. It's good for everyone, and it's just kind of what I want to see. I don't want to be associated with people that are just screaming about how this ruined their childhood, and I don't want to be associated with people that are just constantly ragging on those people either.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, please check out Monster's review over at his channel. He took a little vacation, but he is back, and I really like and recommend the two videos that you've gotten out so far. One of them definitely ties into this. If you're having trouble telling if a reboot is real or not, you have some great tips on that.
Which a lot of people don't.
Yep. But yeah, do you have anything else you want to plug?
No, just sound off in the comments. Let us know what you guys think.
Yeah. All right. With that, PIEGUYRULZ out.
See you guys later.